Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, it's a real pleasure for me and indeed a privilege to have the opportunity to say a few words on this very important gathering. I'm really sorry I can't be with you at this 12th Consultative Assembly of Parliamentarians for the ICC and the Rule of Law, and a remarkable achievement, the 43rd Annual Forum of Parliamentarians for Global Action. You have so much to be proud of. Since the Parliamentarians for Global Action was formed in 1978, you have led in so many fora on the issue of accountability, the rule of law, good governance, and justice. You have played a very important role in the International Criminal Court, and I understand that 78 out of the 123 state parties owe you also a debt of gratitude, because you facilitated, advised, and assisted those states to join up to the Rome Statute system. I'm really delighted and honoured to have the opportunity to speak. So thank you, Senator Lucila Crexel of Argentina, President of CAP-ICC, to the Honourable Kasturi Patel of Malaysia, and of course to the legendary David Donat Katan, Secretary General of PGA, for his years of tireless and dedicated service. The work of Parliamentarians for Global Action needs no introduction. One of the aims, of course, was accountability and nuclear disarmament, and at least trying to prevent nuclear escalation. I understand at least that was one of the core motivators when PGA was started, and also in relation to the ICC, applaud the work of the Honourable Irwin Cutler, who was the first president of CAP-ICC. We are, of course, as you know better than me, at a very pivotal moment in world affairs. Recovering from the terrible pandemic of COVID, with the debts that many countries have fallen into because of those strictures, we are facing conflict in myriad parts of the world. If you look at the work of the office, the 16 situations I've inherited, if you look at situations in Latin America, Afghanistan, Philippines, Israel, Palestine, North, West, East, Central Africa, Georgia, look at Ukraine. We see this continued proclivity of man, of governments, of armed groups to act in a way that is no longer acceptable, in a way that has not been acceptable for a long time, to engage in wanton destruction, to target children and women, to engage in gender persecution, to unleash the powers of technology by way of multiple rocket launchers and missiles upon those that are extremely vulnerable, to spread terror, discontent. And the work of Parliamentarians for Global Action is essential to bring together you as elected politicians of very real standing, of august histories and of seniority, to show that the rule of law is not some optional extra. It is not some concept that we speak about in universities or in chambers of justice, but is something that directly links to peace and security and to actually the possibility of tomorrow. In a world where the environment represents such an existential threat to the continuation of humanity, we are also, in so many parts of the world, engaged in action that is causing death, disfigurement, and destruction on individuals, but on communities. We've seen it in ISIS, in Iraq, in Syria, in parts of West Africa. We see it in other theatres around the world. So this is a moment where we need to stand united. Not only you as parliamentarians for global action, as parliamentarians dedicated to have better tomorrow, parliamentarians that have given an oath to your constitutions, to your legal systems, and to your people, but also regardless of the national boundary and state that you represent or come from, we have to be alive to the suffering of our brothers and sisters in different parts of the world, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because if we don't, the consequences also affect each and every one of us. We see that instability in one country affects others. Look at the situation in Myanmar. Many countries around the world, Malaysia, Bangladesh, Thailand, are destabilized, suffer, have to carry and pay the price because of allegations and conduct in another part of the world. We see the same in Latin America, we see the same in Ukraine. So the law at this moment is not an optional extra. I have said in different fora that it has to be seen for what it is, which in my respectful submission is one of the anchors for peace and stability and security. It is one of the promises, one of the prerequisites, in fact, to ensure that our children have the best chance for a tomorrow governed not by the Wild West, not governed by power of the bully and the dictator and the tyrant, but by something more civilized, which is the law. And when we come to the law, what I said when I was sworn in as prosecutor of the ICC on the 16th of June is something that I feel with every fibre of my body, that the Rome Statute that 123 states have signed up to is owned by all of you, by countries that practice the civil law system, countries that practice the common law system, countries that practice Islamic law or Chinese law, or countries that are completely secular. It represents the shared heritage of humanity, born out of tears and suffering, whether it is the gas chambers of the Holocaust, whether it is the detention centers of the former Yugoslavia, the killing fields of Cambodia, or the rampant crime we've seen in other parts of the world, whether it's the Special Court Sierra Leone or the crimes that are adjudicated by our independent, impartial judges of the International Criminal Court. This is very important because whilst the headquarters of the court is here, far away from Latin America where you meet at the moment, it's here in The Hague, it needs to be seen as close to you, each and every one of you, whichever continent of the world you come from, whether you're from the southern hemisphere or the northern hemisphere, but beyond the elites of which, however humble you are, you represent, it needs to resonate with people in villages, in towns, in restaurants and in the streets as something that is more than a talk shop, but something that protects their rights and is part of their future. This year has been an extraordinarily busy year for the court. In fact, it's been a challenging 2 years. The President of the Court, the President of the Assembly of State Parties, the Registrar of the Court, the men and women of the court, the office, all actors involved in justice deserve a massive thank you for carrying on with the quest of justice during the most difficult days of COVID. And the result has been activity. This year alone, the judges of the court have dealt with the first confirmation hearing in the Said case in the Central African Republic, the beginning of that trial, with the first trial arising out of the Security Council referral in the Sudan situation in the case against Mr. Ali Kushaib, also known as Mr. Abdul Rahman. It has had new arrests that have been received here in The Hague. We've opened situations in Venezuela. We've closed preliminary examinations in Colombia and in Guinea. And of course, opened investigations in Ukraine as well. Yesterday, the independent judges of the pre-trial chamber of the International Criminal Court authorized me to continue investigating allegations arising out of Afghanistan. We need to move forward, we need to build partnerships, and we need to deliver. How do we do that? We do that by trying to keep improving communication. I need to improve my communication, but also we need to make others, you as decision makers, realize with ever greater vitality that we need your help. This court is as strong as you. It is as strong as your governments and as strong as your institutions. We need to be dedicated to justice and realize justice cannot be left an orphan. It requires that consistent support. We're trying to engage in ever better ways in the regions. We've had discussions with the President of the Court and the Registrar at looking at various options that are under discussion, including regional hubs in Asia or in Latin America. As an office, we're trying to have ever better field presence, whether it is in Caracas or whether it is in Kyiv or whether it is in Khartoum. We need to be closer with the people. We need to understand the history, the culture, the needs, the wants of victims and witnesses, and have a better compass to separate truth from falsehood so that we can present ever better evidence, ever more reliable evidence to our independent judges of the court, who then can listen to the defence and legal representatives of victims and decide where the truth lies. And we're very lucky to have those independent judges to rely upon. It also requires us to embrace new technology. We are building, with the assistance particularly of the Registrar, with the trust fund that I launched in March of this year and the support of many states, new technologies that will allow us to do better work faster. The mass data sets that we see in almost all the situations now, but particularly one can talk about Myanmar or Ukraine, but the list goes on, requires us to understand massive data sets, whether it's social media, Facebook or TikTok or cell site evidence or testimonial evidence. We need the technological architecture to deal with that quickly, to grapple with it, to dissect it, and then understanding what that information shows, try to build strong cases in relation to those that may be responsible for Rome Statute crimes for the judges to ultimately decide upon. Using those tools like machine learning, voice-to-text translation, are not optional extras. They are tools that will allow this court, in my respectful view, to be sustainable. Because we have to understand the physical environment we're in. We need your help. The court in December is presenting a budget, and many of you come from governments, I think every country around the world, that are feeling the pain, whether it's energy prices or interest rates or the results of COVID, are feeling the pain about how to use resources effectively. The budget that the court is putting forward is very modest in my view, certainly peanuts compared to the billions being spent on armaments or in terms of dealing with refugees around the world. We are dedicated to try to show in ever more vivid ways the impact of international criminal justice. But what we need you to do, really, if I can be so candid, is to go back to your capitals and advocate for us in your parliaments, with your treasuries, with your foreign ministries, to say we don't just speak the language of justice, nor do we simply sign and rest when our signature is in the ratification of the Rome Statute, but we're going to support this court because it reflects us and our values and our hopes for the future. Using this technology is also key because I've said repeatedly, the ICC, in my view, is not clearly an apex court. It is a hub. the types of criminality we see around the world is often so vast, it is so complex. No one legal system, no one court, no one chamber, no one prosecutor can deal with it by themselves. And the hub that we are trying to create in the Office of the Prosecutor is one where we can use technology, build partnerships, analyze, receive, organize, dissect evidence and information ourselves, put cases to our judges to decide, but also a hub that can give evidence and information to your national systems, to your national police, your national prosecutors, who in turn can present it to your national judges to ensure that there's no impunity, that collectively we share the burden of responsibility to make sure that there's no safe haven in 2022 or in the future for genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, or where we have jurisdiction, the crime of aggression. This requires a partnership, and we're trying to do it in many different ways. In terms of Ukraine, we signed for the first time in the history of the office an agreement to be a participant in a joint investigative team with 7 other countries. Just in the last month or so, I also signed an agreement to join a joint investigative team in relation to the Libya situation, partnering with Spain, the Netherlands, Italy, and also the Netherlands. These cooperation in teams are something we need more of, because it's born from this joint obligation. International justice is too important to leave to judges or to prosecutors or to national authorities. It requires this cross-border partnerships and this collective resolve. So as battles loom, and as in 2022, when we have enough to be dealing with in terms of economic woes and travails, as the youth raise their voice in remarkable ways regarding the environment, we realize that in certain quarters, people are talking about tactical nuclear weapons. If this moment does not wake us up and motivate us to action, what on earth will? The future is ours to craft. It is our responsibility to safeguard that future for our next generation. But it requires your resolve and our efficiency to work together independently, impartially, but with a belief that the law can help carve out a future for tomorrow, and that a world without law is a world without future. Those partnerships bring results. In the last couple of weeks, I had the honor of publicly announcing that the Office of the Prosecutor played a role in facilitating the ability of Italy and the Kingdom of the Netherlands to extradite and have transferred from Ethiopia individuals to those domestic systems for allegations of people trafficking. That is a direct result of partnership. And there will be accountability in the courts of Italy and in the court of Netherlands in relation to conduct which is alleged to have caused misery and loss. That's the potential. That's what we can do. We can do much more together with your help. Thank you so much for giving me the great honor to say a few words on this really important event. Thank you.